Yesterday we discussed about some basic points. I explained you detailedly about that. Actually, yesterday we discussed two important options. What are the basic requirements for building an end-to-end application? And these are the points we learned. Last session we discussed about few points. Yeah, these are demo classes, right? So what are the basic requirements for building end-to-end web application? And what are the challenges in modern web application? What are the challenges in modern web development? So we discussed about unified experience, fluid user experience, loosely coupled extensible architecture, simplified deployment and upgrades. And we learned about what is the solution. Solution is better we can build single page progressive web applications instead of going with the traditional applications, instead of going with the traditional web application, right? Right. Yeah. These are enough font size. It's okay for everyone, right? Because people on mobile need to view them properly. All right. So we discussed about what is the solution, that is build single page applications, progressive web application instead of traditional web applications. So yesterday's concepts we clearly understood about the challenges in modern web development, right? Yeah. And what is the solution, right? Now today we will see, right, towards the end of the session I will clarify all your doubts, sharing notes, sharing everything. Please wait till the session is completed and ping your messages at that time. You are concentrating on more messages rather than what we are learning here, I think, right? Once listen to the concept, once it's finished, we will discuss about that. Please don't ping any messages in between, okay? Okay, today is your first class, continue, listen, no problem, right? So if anybody missed out the sessions, we will discuss, I will take a backup whenever registrations are done, right? For registered people, we will take the backup of the previous sessions and we will discuss, right? Now don't ask when backup will be, right? Okay, right. So we will discuss about that, fine. Now, how to build single page and progressive web applications, dealing with single page and progressive web applications. So here the point is, here one more important question here is, how do we build single page and progressive web applications? So can we continue with HTML, CSS, JavaScript or jQuery, JavaScript and jQuery? That means the question is asked in this way also. The question is like, can we build single page applications and progressive web applications using JavaScript and jQuery, That is the question. What is a single page application? Yesterday I told you, usually single page applications will have these all features like unified experience, fluid user experience, loosely coupled extensible, simplified deployment. That means I told you that user will stay on only one page and will get access to everything onto that page. Progressive web application means an app-like experience, in the browser. That means an application looks, so a progressive web application means a website looks like an app even when you are using in a browser. That is progressive web application. So can we build single page progressive web application using JavaScript and jQuery? So the answer is yes, you can build that. You can build single page applications, progressive web applications by using JavaScript and jQuery. So that is not a problem, right? So the point here, then the question here is, then why we are looking for or looking into new technologies. So new technologies for building single page and progressive web applications. Progressive web applications. Why we are looking into new technologies for building single page progressive? Because you said that you can build single page applications, progressive web applications by using JavaScript and jQuery. Then why we have to go with the new technologies, right? The new frameworks, new technologies, new tools. What is problem in JavaScript and jQuery? What are the issues with JavaScript and jQuery? This is one of the main point to understand. So why we are looking into new technologies for building single page application? The question is, don't we have single page application before Angular, before React? So we have. So with JavaScript, jQuery, we build single page applications. But we were facing a lot of issues with them. What are the major issues with the JavaScript and jQuery, especially if we are using them for building single page and progressive web applications? The first important issue with JavaScript and jQuery is JavaScript and jQuery so uses lot of DOM manipulations. I hope anyone who learned about HTML, he know about DOM. DOM is document object model. That means JavaScript, jQuery completely depend on DOM manipulation only. That means referring the elements by ID, referring the elements by tag name, referring the elements by class name, reference by using a DOM hierarchy. I think if you have learned HTML, you know that HTML presents elements in a hierarchical order, and that hierarchical order is called as DOM. That is a general thing that everyone knows when he knows about HTML. This is actually HTML DOM, the document object model. That means how HTML presents everything. This is the DOM hierarchy. Now the point is here, JavaScript, jQuery completely depend on these DOM manipulations. So if they are depending on DOM manipulations, then lot of references, then lot of coding, then heavy pages. So lot of references, lot of coding, and heavy pages. However, jQuery has reduced the number of lines that we have to write in JavaScript. but actually jQuery uses JavaScript library, and DOM manipulations are common. In JavaScript, jQuery DOM manipulations are common. Lot of references, lot of coding. For example, if you are aware of HTML and JavaScript, one simple example I will show you. Suppose temporarily I am adding some page, demo.html. Okay. Don't worry on what I am doing here. Just you need to concentrate on what are DOM manipulations. We have a head section and we have a script and we have a function body load. Okay. And in the body on load, I will call this body load. And here in the body section, we have a div in that image. So width is 100, height is 100, and border as 1. So that is an image, but no source is there. I have another div, will have a form. Inside that we have a name, we have text box for name, and we have text box. Input type is equal to text, and we have a button. Input type is equal to button, like this. Now important is the page looks like this. The page look like this. The page looks like this. This is empty. Now important, I want JavaScript and jQuery to take control over HTML. And you know, press F12, you go to the debugger. In the debugger, you can see this is the debugger. And in the debugger, you can observe we have elements, right? In the debugger, you can see elements. So these are all the HTML elements. Generally, we call them as DOM elements. When I go to network, so network is the location where you can track the performance of the page. This is the network. You can use any browser. Here we have stop recording and start recording. We have the options, and we request the pages from servers. They will come. It will get this, and you can see here, you can see HTML page finished loading, and you see here the status DOM content loaded. That it took 27 milliseconds to load the DOM content. DOM content loaded at the bottom. That means HTML presents everything in a hierarchical order. This is the hierarchy actually. In a hierarchical order, we call this as DOM, document object model. Actually, this is a very big hierarchy. In this, 2 points are there actually. So in this this part is considered as DOM. We have document object model, and the entire model is called as BOM. So that is browser object model. Browser object model. HTML uses only DOM. JavaScript can manipulate both browser model as well as document model. Location, history, navigator, window, all this comes under browser objects. They all comes under browser objects. Now, how JavaScript jQuery takes control over elements. So once the DOM is loaded, DOM content is loaded. That's what it is saying inside the debugger. It is saying that DOM content is loaded. Once the DOM content is loaded, so now I want JavaScript to take control over this picture and put a photo inside it. Then on body load, we are writing the hierarchy. You see how to access images. According to the DOM hierarchy, you can see images is an array. Images array is present in document. Document is present in window. That is the hierarchy of images. Then how we access the images? Generally, we access the images like this. Parent is window. In that document, in that we have images. Images is an array. Currently, in our page, we have one image that is at index 0 and 0. And it is an image. Image usually have src. src is equal to dot dot slash images slash. In my project, I have some images, some Nike dot jpg. And I will save this. I will save this. And jQuery will take, JavaScript will take control and put a picture here. So it is JPG or PNG. So whatever the picture I am having, it will take control and display. I think I have shoe.jpg, right? So I will use shoe.jpg. Okay. Means whatever the pictures I'm having, it will display that. That's how it takes control. It takes control. This is DOM hierarchy. Of course, if you have learned JavaScript, you have learned get element by ID, get element by name, get element by tag name. These are all document functions. Without using document functions, actually, this is how it handles the entire hierarchy. And I want to access a button inside a form, then I need to follow this complete hierarchical order. That means this is the button. I need to access a button. Button is present in elements, elements in forms, forms in document, document in window. That is the order. So that means JavaScript, jQuery, both depends on this DOM manipulation. That means I have to define like this. See, I have a button, but button is empty. I want to put a value to button called submit. So then I want JavaScript to take control. Then window, document, dot, in that forms, and forms is an array. Currently we have only one form in our page, and that form is referred as 0. In that elements, currently we have two elements in the form. One is text box, another one button. Text box at index 0, button at index 1. Then we want to access button, then 1. It is a button. Button usually have value. Value we will keep as submit. Submit. You can see that. Now JavaScript takes control and keeps that button. That is what actually DOM manipulations are. JavaScript, jQuery completely depends on DOM manipulations. Lot of DOM manipulations, lot of references, lot of coding. This makes pages very heavy. That means it makes slow rendering. Slow rendering. Another important is we have navigation issues. Navigation issues, which should not be there, especially when we are designing progressive or a single page application. Navigation issue means nothing but JavaScript jQuery can provide access to history, location like objects, and history object will allow to navigate to previous page, to back, forward. That is the reason you might have observed that in banking or transactions, anywhere you are doing some money transaction online, then the bank site will always alert you saying that transaction is going on, don't push back button, right? Now you may be thinking like, we are in very advanced technology, we are even using artificial intelligence, then bank people cannot control this after all back button, and they are asking us, please don't push back button, otherwise your transaction will be cancelled. That means in so advanced technology we are now, and after all we can't control the back button clicking by user. Of course you cannot control, especially if you are using JavaScript or jQuery. It's not possible at all. That is the reason. So a very high level application also is very much concerned about whether you are pushing the back button or not. And especially single page applications where we don't want navigation to previous page, next page. We want everything to come onto one location. In that case, JavaScript, jQuery are not good in managing our navigation, especially for single page applications and progressive web applications. That is the biggest issue. That is the problem with the JavaScript and jQuery, right? Another important JavaScript, jQuery, one more major problem is data binding issues. Data binding issues are nothing but how to collect the data, how to present the data. For that, it needs to depend on lot of events. It have to depend on lot of events. On click, what should happen? On key up, what should happen? On change, what should happen? That means how you will identify that some change occurred inside the data so that you can collect the change and update the change. That means accessing the data, binding the data to UI, identifying the changes in the data, updating the changes, and reverting back those changes to the data. This all required. Data means I'm talking about client side only. Don't think database. So we are talking about JavaScript, jQuery means we are talking about data client side. Usually data client side means it can be XML or JSON type data, right? Data binding issues are there. It has to depend on lot of events. For example, suppose we have an example here, simple. Suppose what we are doing is we are designing a simple screen here. So we are designing a simple screen. And in this we have text box. Let's keep it more simple. I am not using this on load, body load also, so that you can clearly examine what I am doing here. So name input type is equal to text. And so here, so I am displaying in the next line, so heading, or simply I will keep a div, and here I will say hello, and I keep a span here. Now what the point is, whatever the value they entered inside the text box, I need to bring and display here in the span below, hello, that particular name. Then what we are doing is we are using lot of means how to access the data, how to bind the data. Again, lot of references, lot of events. That means, of course, you know, I need an ID for the text box or name, txt name. I need an ID for span, the ID as msg. Now I need to write a function. Function is hello, and hello function is document.getElement by ID txt, sorry, msg dot inner html is equal to document.getElement by ID txt name dot value. I hope you know all this, right? This is all the approach, and very important, this is not enough. This is not enough. I am entering anything. It is not updating. Why it is not updating? Because I need to tell when it has to update. That means when it has to update. While typing, I need to update. On blur, I need to update. That means here I will write a event on blur. On blur is equal to hello. On blur is equal to hello. That function so will be executed. On blur, the hello function should be executed. Hello. That means, so I typed some name, Raj, and I press tab, I blur, then it will get that and display. So lot of references, lot of coding, data binding issues. Where the data is there, get the data, bind the data to UI, again changes in the UI, take back, store the reference. It requires a lot of implementation. So it is not easy. It is not easy. Another important problem with JavaScript and jQuery here is JavaScript. JavaScript is a language, and jQuery is a library. JavaScript is a language and jQuery is a library. And very important, you should know that language and library can build application, but cannot control application flow, They need to depend on a lot of events. A language and library can build application, but cannot control the application flow. That's what the point is. That means here, one of the major problem, JavaScript is a language, jQuery is a library. By using JavaScript and jQuery, you can build application, but you cannot control the application flow. You can't control the application flow. So that is the problem with JavaScript and jQuery. That means application need to depends on a lot of references and a lot of events. So for example, that means I will explain the basic scenario. For example, suppose we are developing an application. That means a web application. And in this, we are using jQuery. jQuery is a library. We are using jQuery, and jQuery is a library. So jQuery is library. So by using a library, we built an application. Now, usually what happens when you build an application? So the first step is page is loaded into memory. That means the first step, page loads into browser, because usually, so the page is requested from browser. So first step, what happens? It loads the page into browser. Okay. After loading the page into browser, then what happens is, after loading page into browser, page loads static DOM into browser. Page loads static DOM into browser, document object model. It is a static DOM. That means it is loaded, but static DOM means the elements loaded, but they are not responding, they are not functioning. It's a static DOM. Already I showed you the page loads, the browser loads on an event. You saw in the debugger, I have shown you. In the debugger network, I have shown you stop trafficking, start, record and start. And you can see it says DOM content loaded. I requested a page in the browser, then DOM content loaded. This is static DOM. That means it's not having any interactions. We are not responding. So it's not responding. It's just static DOM. After loading the static DOM, next step what happens is, after loading the static DOM, the next step is it loads. So page loads the library into browser. Page loads the library into browser. That means whatever the library you are using for application, that library is loaded into browser. That means the jQuery library is loaded into browser. Actually, the jQuery library is loaded into browser if I am using jQuery. For example, temporarily, I will remove this all, blur events and all here, just to make you understand about that. And here I am removing this, and I am adding a library. Script source is equal to, in my project I have library jQuery. So this jQuery.js. You don't need to worry what is jQuery, what I am writing. You just need to concentrate on the concept. That's it, right? Here I'm using jQuery. Now what happens is, I refresh. You can see that. You can see here the page is loaded into memory, and it loads the page into memory, and it loads the static DOM into memory. Library also loaded into memory. You can see jQuery library is loaded into memory. It is loaded into memory. That means it's also loaded into browser. But see here, when I am typing some name, so David, and it is not working. it is not working. That means it is loaded, but it is not working. Why? Because one of the main problem here is, so library is loaded into our application, means into our browser, but the problem is library is passive. Library is passive. Passive means library is passive. Passive means library is not active. Library is passive, that means it is not active. So that means library is loaded, but it is passive, it is not active. That means if library is not active, that means it is not responding to you. That means application is not responding to your interactions. It is passive. Now what do you know what should happen now? Actually, what should happen to make the library active? So to make the library active, what should happen is the browser uses events to make the library active. Browser uses events to make the library active. Events like on click, on change, on blur, on key up, these are the events. Then the static DOM is converted into dynamic DOM. That means the static DOM is transformed into dynamic DOM. The static DOM is transformed into dynamic DOM. It is transformed into the dynamic DOM. So now the application starts responding. That means it needs lot of events. That means, see, this page is not working. The interactions are not working, because now what I have to do is, in that library is loaded, but it's not active. I need to make the library active. I have to use dollar function. Now the library loads. It becomes active. Then I have to use data binding techniques to collect the data and add the data to the span. That means I have to access here dollar. So hash txt name dot key up. That means when key up, then we have to write a function. This function should update the details into msg hash msg dot html, because it is a span. In that we have to get the value entered in hash txt name dot val. I have to display in this way. That means we have to write events. We need to tell from where to pull the data, where to bind the data. Once it is defined, now I am typing here. Now it is working. It's working fine. That means JavaScript, jQuery, they are after all language and library. They cannot control the application flow. This is one biggest problem with JavaScript and jQuery. If you tell about this type of problem to any software developer belonging to any technology, that I am learning a language and a library, through that I am learning how to build an application. Now, what is the solution? Application is unable to control the flow. What else I need inside it? Then usually any technician will suggest that better use a framework. So anyone will suggest you that better use a framework. Technically, it's a very big concept about to understand framework. It's not a simple point. But as of now, we will just take an overview, then detail we will discuss when we start working with it. Technically, a framework provides a library for building the application, as well as it have the ability to control the application flow. Technically, framework is a software architectural pattern which is responsible for building the application as well as controlling the application flow. That means a framework is an software architectural pattern. If you don't know what is architectural pattern, I will tell you. It is a software architectural pattern. So that is similar. Actually, you can simply say that it is a software architectural pattern that can build the application, and also control the application flow, application flow. That means it can build the application and also control the application flow. So better use a framework. A framework is a software architectural pattern that can build the application and also control the application flow. So instead of using a language or a library, that's the reason. So you learned technologies like Java, like .NET, like PHP, like Python. So once you go to any real world development, the first question in interviews they ask, what frameworks you know? You learned Java, okay, fine. What frameworks you know? You don't know frameworks, you are not a developer. That means you are not suitable as a developer for real world environment if you are not aware of framework. Of course, you know, Java people learn framework like Spring, Hibernate, and microservices. All this comes under that. And of PHP people learn frameworks like Cake PHP, Code Igniter. Python people learn frameworks like Django Flask. .NET people learn frameworks like ASP.NET. That means a framework is having a broader scope. It allows you to build the application and control the application flow. Now the question here is, do we have any framework to use client side? Do we have any framework to use client side? So do we have any framework to use client side? So answer is yes. You have so many frameworks to use client side. Actually, there are so many frameworks. Earlier, we don't have much frameworks. That's the reason we are restricted to deal with only specific. We don't have much frameworks. So we don't have much frameworks client side. Now, important is, do we have any framework to use client side? Yes, we have several frameworks client side. So many frameworks are there. So many frameworks came like Knockout.js, like Ember.js, like Vue.js, like Backbone.js, so like Angular.js, so many frameworks there. Actually, when we started training people for building applications for the real world scenarios, especially single page applications, we trained developers at a corporate level on a framework called Knockout.js in the initial days. Single page application means people have to talk about Knockout.js. After that, Ember, Backbone, like that, several frameworks came. And Angular.js, when it was introduced into the market, it was a revolution. And majority of developers started migrating towards AngularJS. Why? The reason we will see. We will discuss about that. That means why AngularJS? What is the intention of AngularJS? What is the point about AngularJS? We don't need to discuss difference between Knockout.js, Ember.js, Vue.js, Backbone.js. We don't need that. We need to just understand why Angular is better or why Angular is more trending than others in the real world scenario. Of course, even today, several Java projects, .NET projects, PHP projects are using Backbone.js. They are using Knockout.js, but the ratio of AngularJS is more when compared to others. Now, initially we started with them only. What is the specialty of framework? Framework have the ability to both build the application and control the application flow. Now the question is, do we have any framework to use client side? Yes, you have. Then better to use it. That means, what is the specialty of framework? What is the specialty of framework? The specialty of framework is nothing but the major specialty of framework is nothing but. So what framework can do is, in this type of architecture, actually what framework can do is, so the framework have the ability like this. So what a framework can do, that means what is the ability of framework, so when compared to library. For example, we are developing an application. This time we are using framework. Same, page loads into browser. Page loads static DOM into browser. Framework loads into browser, and framework is active. Directly it takes control. That means it starts functioning. Directly it takes control. It starts functioning. That's great. That means now it reduces a lot of effort that you have to do by using language and a library. But important, framework also requires language, because you know that framework is a combination of language and library which allows you to do two things: build the application, control the application flow. Framework requires a language, and all the frameworks that are developed client side were using JavaScript again. What are the problems? We will discuss about that. That is secondary point. Here the point is, so it has the ability. It has the ability to control the application flow. Then we don't need to much depend on events. So we use a framework approach which can easily access, bind, and handle the interactions. For example, temporarily. The same example I will show you with a framework.html type. But actually for that we need to install some frameworks. In my project I am installing npm install AngularJS framework I am installing. Okay. So, okay, ready. So now what I'm doing here, this time I'm using the head section and script source is equal to, in the node modules, Angular and Angular.js. I'm using a framework now. In the body section we have name. So as input type is equal to text, and in the next line, right? So I will keep a div. Here I say hi and a span where I want to display that message. Now framework can take control of your HTML body section. It can use an architecture of MVC, MVP, MVVM like client side. Then it is using a model for accessing the username, and it is binding that username to this span. We are not using any events. We are not using any logic. So we are just using a framework approach, and I will run this. And here I am typing, then it is working fine. That looks great. That means it's good. That means now whatever the effort you have kept in designing with the library, this is library, and this is framework. So you are not using much events. I am not saying that we don't need events. I am saying that we don't need to much depend on events every time. I am not saying that we don't write logic. We have to write logic. Without logic, how you can handle the application? But the point is, the application flow is under the control of application. Internally, it is using client side, these knockout, ember, view, backbone, all these are using client side. They are using MVC, MVP, MVVM like architectures, frameworks. That's great. That's good. Actually, you are using this server side in JSP, PHP, .NET. You are using server side. But now client side, we are using this type of frameworks. This client side we are. So client side we are using these frameworks. We are handling these frameworks now. Right? That is great. What is the advantage of using these frameworks? All these we will discuss. Now here the key point is to understand is why AngularJS is most trending. So till so many years, why it was trending. So rather than the knockout ember, because we thought that when knockout.js we started training or developing application through knockout.js, we thought that it will make a good trend in the market. Of course, it started, but suddenly AngularJS took the market. So why? What is the reason behind that? What is the reason behind that? I hope you understood the problem with JavaScript jQuery, and you also understood what is the solution to overcome those issues. That means to overcome all these issues, better use a framework. Now, which framework you decide according to your project requirements, because you cannot say that this is great, this is not great. So according to their requirements, according to their environment, they will go with what they need for that particular situation, right? So it is not like this is great, this is not great, because we have people asking for Knockout.js even today. We have people asking for Backbone.js even today, for Java developers, .NET developers also. But the point is, everybody don't want that, right? Majority ratio is asking for Angular, AngularJS, React.js like things. That's the reason we need to understand what are the abilities of this. Why AngularJS is became so popular? One of the main reason is AngularJS. AngularJS is an open source and a cross-platform framework introduced by Google. Okay, that's great. That is why people are behind it. So AngularJS is an open source cross-platform framework introduced by Google. Okay, that's great. That means AngularJS belongs to Google, and maintained by a large community of organizations and developers to address the issues in single page applications. So who is behind AngularJS? That makes AngularJS popular. That means who is behind AngularJS? Google is behind AngularJS. That's great. Now the point is, actually AngularJS has several drawbacks again. It has several issues, so many technical problems. So still, in spite of those issues, we are still using it. But those problems are same for everywhere. So to overcome those issues, now we are going with some more new things like Angular, like React and all. So what is the problem in AngularJS, and what are the advantages of AngularJS? That means we need to understand two things. What are the features of AngularJS? What are the drawbacks of AngularJS? And what is Angular? And what is relationship between Angular and AngularJS? These things we need to understand. That we are going to see in tomorrow's session, right? Demos, we will have short session. This is enough for demos. Once our register session starts, we will spend minimum 1 hour of time for every day, right? So this is enough. And what I will do is, whatever the notes I given, so yesterday and today and everything, right? All these notes, including the diagram and everything, I will upload into a GitHub repository. I will give you the link of that GitHub repository. I will keep the name as 27/5/2020 notes.txt. So this is the notes I uploaded, and I will ping you that in the messages. So this is where you will find our classroom notes and everything, right? That's where you can find our classroom notes and everything regularly. So yeah, all of them. This is for anything related to others, you can contact. Difference between applications, different versions of Angular. So you don't know what is Angular, then you can't talk about what are the difference between Angular versions. That's like big joke. I hope everyone understood that, right? Without still knowing about Angular, you can't talk about what are the differences between Angular versions, right? Right. Fine.